Hey, boys and girls, it is your guy, J.G. Taydine, publisher / Commodore at auburnsports.com. You know that because of the backdrop here. I make it pretty obvious. I've been there for a number of years. Yes, indeed. Oh, it also says that there at the bottom, of course. Happy Monday to you guys. It is finally game week. Auburn is now gearing up in earnest for its game against the hated Akron Zips, to be contested Saturday night, 6 o'clock, inside Jordan-Hare Stadium. And that's going to be broadcast, telecast, etc., webcast, I guess, on ESPN+. Hopefully it'll show up somewhere on my 8,000 channels that I have on my Spectrum account. But if not, we'll just stream it, absolutely. Today was notable because we got our first official depth chart of the Bryan Harsin era. And there were a few surprises, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, not as surprising at all. I had projected depth charts outlined on the Brain Drain Saturday night with J-Head, one of our great posters, kind of coming in behind me and making sure that I had some of that stuff right. We did very, very well on the offensive side of the ball. Let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. Essentially no changes to the lineup that you saw on the Brain Drain Saturday, with the exception of at tight end, Fromm is ahead of Brandon Frazier, but they have an obscene amount of riches at that particular position. I do want to go through a few of these. That outside wide receiver spot with Shed Jackson was having trouble in the spring as far as just staying healthy. But he's 100% now, and he has balled out this camp. They've been talking about him the whole time, not just leadership, but just the way he's been performing. So that's been his spot to lock down, and he has done exactly that. Xavion Capers behind him. Elijah Canyon is not on the official depth chart, but he is the third guy at that spot, so I thought I would include him as well. Austin Troxell at left tackle. Brandon Council and Alec Jackson at left guard are bracketed. So we'll see exactly who shows up there for the game. I think it'll be Council. Nick Brahms at center. KJ or Keandre Jones at right guard. He is bracketed with Tayshawn Manning. Two guys that I think are excellent football players right there. I'm not exactly sure which person will kind of win that job. I still would expect KJ to win it, but if Tayshawn went out there for the first series, I would not be shocked. And Brodarius Ham at right tackle, I think he was pretty much the clear winner there. So is that line good? It's not bad. It's got some experience there, and I like some of these guys. I think KJ's a good player. I think Brahms is a good player. Council's a good player when he's healthy. I like Broham better as a guard, but he definitely will hit a man, and he's a good finisher. My big question is at left tackle. Austin Troxell, I think, is a good football player. I just don't know if he's ready to go step for step with some of these nasty, nasty defensive ends they're going to be facing. They will not be facing anybody like that in the next couple weeks. So maybe this will be a chance for Austin Troxell to just kind of get his bearings and do what he does. Because when he's at his best, he's a run-blocking menace and someone who absolutely drives people off the field. At the wideout spots, we mentioned Shed, Xavion, and Elijah earlier. Javarius Johnson and Tavarish Dawson at the slot receiver spots. We did notice that Tavarish was not out there for the open practice on Saturday. I don't think that's injury-related. I think that's a close contact situation, but we'll just kind of keep a monitor of that. Bo Nix, obviously, with Finley behind him. And then Loy and Demetrius Davis behind those two. Grant Loy's had an average camp. I think Demetrius has been better than expected, but again, he's a true freshman. I don't know how much he's going to play. At tailback, Tank Bigsby, obviously All-American type player. Sean Shiver is one of the best backups in the country. And then Hunter, the true freshman coming over from Philadelphia, Mississippi, who's been great in camp. A very strong player. We'll just have to see if he's kind of got what it takes to be a good tailback, making decisions coming up to the line, understanding his blocking and those kinds of things that are difficult to tell unless you're going full speed against another team. He'll probably have a chance to do that maybe against Akron and certainly against Alabama State and just kind of see. John Samuel Shanker, the presumed starter at tight end with Luke Deal, Fromm, Frazier, and Landon King, the true freshman behind them. Incredible depth there, and I would expect to see at least one tight end on the field pretty much all the time. At the inside receiver spot, Demetrius Robertson, the gentleman, person who transferred over from University of Georgia. He showed up, I guess, a couple days late to camp, but has caught up very quickly, and I think he has been their top-performing receiver in practice, in scrimmages so far this season. I think he's their number one guy right off the bat. We've talked about it on the rundown. It's a little problematic in a way because you would hope that you would have somebody here, at least somebody, if not somebodies, that would be able to challenge him for that wide receiver one spot and not just have a guy who caught 6 or 7 passes last year at Georgia be able to take that spot so easily, but it is what it is. If he's a player, he's a player. Kobe Hudson right behind him, along with Malcolm Johnson Jr., two guys that have had very good camps, and then Kayla Newton just kind of slid in there looking for depth. So on offense, this is about what we expected. On the defensive side of the ball, things got a little bit weird for me in a few of these spots. For me, the edge DE spot is tough to quantify. Auburn set it up today, their depth chart, to look like a 3-4 front. Derek Mason is going to use a lot of different looks up front, and he is somebody who is not afraid to run a 3-man front. So when you switch between a 4 and a 3-man front, the position that really faces the most scrutiny there is going to be that edge DE spot, because a guy like Derek Hall, number 29, who is the presumed starter at that spot, he's a guy who's comfortable doing both. He can play in space as like a linebacker type, or if he's got his hand on the ground up front playing, outside wide technique, he can do that too. He's a very versatile and a very good player. But like somebody like T.D. Moultrie, who was officially listed as the backup at that position, when they go to a 3-man look, I think he would be the number one choice at that spot as kind of like a dropping linebacker or just kind of a blitzer, somebody who's playing in space a little bit more. I think that's more catered to what TD is and what he can do. So it's kind of like depending on what the front is, I think that hierarchy changes a little bit. But this is the way they listed it, and so that's the way we'll show it. Marcus Harris, the number one choice at defensive tackle, a young man from Montgomery, Alabama, who played at Kansas last year. Auburn fought very hard to get him. Derek Mason did indeed. Didn't necessarily think that was a big acquisition at the time. I mean, he played last year as a true freshman at Kansas, but Kansas was horrible, and it was kind of difficult, I think, looking at him on tape to tell if he was a playmaker or not. It's pretty clear they're very happy with what he's done so far in camp. So he's going to get the start there. Tony Fair at nose. Not sure, and I think Jay Head said this on the show the other day, not sure he's a 3-down player at this point. He's very heavy. I think they listed him at 335. I think he's kind of a first down, second down guy, and we'll just kind of see how many snaps he can handle. Very surprised I was to see J.J. Pegues be the second choice guy at that nose position. I think a lot of J.J. Obviously, he's an athletic freak. I just thought that Dre Butler had a little bit more experience and a little more refinement of the technique. JJ's just coming over from H-back. So for him to get into the second spot there is amazing. Great achievement for him. Colby Wooden and Zeke Walker over there at defensive end. Caleb Johnson, number 45, was not on the official depth chart. He is working at that spot. I think he's had at least a solid camp, and I think he's somebody you'll see play over there. At linebacker, no surprises there. Assuming they were in a 4-3 look like this, Zacoby McClain, obviously team captain type player. Owen Papo, team captain type player. Chandler Wooten, team captain type player. Actually, Wooten and Papo are team captains. I would not be surprised at all to see Zacoby get that designation at times as well. 3 outstanding linebackers, 3 of the most experienced and talented guys. Probably the best core of linebackers in the SEC and one of the best in the country, if not. At cornerback, a little bit of a surprise. So Nehemiah Pritchett gets the start on that left side there. And I thought Dre Miller was going to be able to get that. Now, he had a great practice on Saturday. Dre Miller, of course, was the outstanding cornerback that came in from West Virginia last year. And we just figured, since he was all conference where he came from, that he would have a chance to come right in and start. But the truth is that he's just been outplayed a little bit. I don't think they're upset with the camp that he's had or the adjustments he's made. I think they just think Nehemiah's been better. Roger McCreary at the other cornerback spot, obviously he's one of the best players they have on the entire roster, so he's going to be a lockdown guy. Torrance, a young man who comes in from Hutchinson Community College in Kansas. He's actually from Bessemer, Alabama, and had a great year in JUCO last year. We didn't necessarily know what to expect from him. I mean, being great in JUCO doesn't necessarily translate to being great in the SEC or in Division I. And he's also kind of a unique body type, right? He's 6'4", looks more like a safety, but they love his cover skills. So he's been a surprise to jump in there and get that spot. Pretty sweet. Smoke Monday, obviously, at free safety. And by Darius Knighton, the graduate transfer from Southeast Missouri State, comes in, and he's going to get the start of that boundary safety spot. I think that's a big story, honestly. I mean, you come in from a lower division, and then you lock down a spot right there. And really what he did was he moved up ahead of Donovan Kaufman, who was the talk of the summer. And I think he had a good camp too. But I think they like him a little bit more there. So to me, at safety, you've got Knighton and Monday going to play, and I think Kaufman and Puckett can get in there and play a little bit too. I think you're going to see a lot of rotation there. On the official depth chart, they did not include anything about nickel. I think you're going to see nickel play. a good amount of the time, maybe 25, 30, maybe even 35% of the time. If they go to nickel, that's Donovan Kaufman's spot for sure. And if he has to come out and they switch it, I think Ladarius Tennyson, a.k.a. Lord Tennyson, can play there. Puckett can play there. And also Darius Geis, who's a walk-on, or a former walk-on, but he's been playing really well, and they love his attitude and effort. So that is the proposed defense right there that you'll see against Akron. And to me, there's a few surprises a little bit at cornerback. Seeing Pritchett as a starter surprised me, and I think J.J. Pegues being able to slide in there as the number 2 guy is a pretty big deal for him. I also put together a little graphic here of the movers and the shakers, some notable inclusions. We mentioned earlier Torrance, the young man coming in from JUCO, locking down the second-team spot at cornerback. I think that's a big deal. He is physically just such an interesting person because you think of cornerbacks as being like kind of shorter, thinner, fast twitch guys like a Roger McCreary, like a Jamel Dean, who's more of a narrow guy. Jamel's a little bit taller, but 6'4" is crazy to play at cornerback. So we'll just kind of see what he does, but he has been dropping jaws in practice. They have been really, really fired up about that. I also mentioned Marcus Harris, first team at defensive tackle coming in from Kansas, a young man from Montgomery. I think he's got a chance to be a huge story. And then I mentioned J.J. Pegues as well. Can't say enough about Pegues. Going in from H-back last year to kind of he said in an interview recently that, when they kind of pulled me over to defense, I was like, I don't know how to feel about that. But he definitely got the buy-in. He and Nick Eason, his position coach at that spot, have really gotten along well. And Nick has talked to J.J. a lot about, hey, man, you have a great future at this position. I think you can really grow as a player and make a lot of money in the future. And J.J. is all in on that. Some notable exclusions. I mentioned Dre Miller, who I think is going to go into the season as the 5th cornerback, but they're not unhappy with him. They feel like he's played well. He missed some time with an injury, and I think he's the guy that will climb in there and he'll get some snaps. He'll have a chance to prove himself, and I think when he has a chance to do that, he'll do that. Exclusions, I put nickel because they didn't put nickel on the official depth chart, even though it's going to be a position that people play a lot. So it's just more notable than anything. Elijah Canyon, a wideout that a lot of people have been talking about, would want to see more of him. They used him a little bit late in the season last year, and he surprised some folks by being pretty dang competent. But, he looks like he's a third-team guy right now, and I think they just have a lot of dudes that have played a little bit better in the camp so far. I don't think he's down and out or anything like that. I just think we'll see him. We'll see him, and he'll have a chance to play. Also, at kick return, they did not have Tank Bigsby, which I think was a relief to a lot of people at our community because Tank is such an important part of the process this year, right? They need him at tailback as much as possible, and to not see him at kickoff return is probably a good thing. That's going to be, at least to start with, Donovan Kaufman and Pritchett are going to be playing that position, returning kickoffs. And then on the punt side, let's see. It's J.J. Javarius Johnson, who's just a super quick, slot receiver guy, and then Demetrius Robertson, who is more of a traditional wideout. Those two guys will be handling punts. So Bryan Harsin puts a lot of effort, a lot of emphasis on special teams, people contributing that way. But Tank Bigsby will have to find another way to do it, and I think it's probably a good idea. That's a quick overview of what we learned today on the depth chart, some surprises and some inclusions and exclusions, and also some great stories to kind of keep an eye on as Auburn's season begins this weekend against the Akron Zips. I thank you guys for watching the show. If you're enjoying the content, please consider subscribing to our channel or subscribing to our site at auburnsports.com, where I am the publisher. We also got Brian Matthews there, Christian Clemente there, Brian Stoltz there. We even got an intern, Caleb Jones, as well. So check us out, auburnsports.com. See you guys for the next upload. Until then, peace and love.